And there are a couple of writers at The Athletic who think they know something about college football. They've done a Mount Rushmore. Nick Saban on there, of course. But who is missing? It may be pretty easy to figure out if you're a historian of college football. Ari Wasserman is one of the two who did that list, and I will just put some duct tape over my mouth so I don't interrupt our good friend Ari. Ari, good afternoon. Thanks so much. Take us through the process of this and how you landed on your Mount Rushmore candidates.
Yeah, so listen, it's 150 years, 160 years of college football history, and there are a lot of very good coaches, and you have to whittle it down to 4. It's very impossible. And, you know, you could have just made the list. You could have just said Nick Saban, Paul Bear Bryant, Newt Rockne, and Tom Osborne and moved on. But that's not interesting. So I personalized my list based on my experience in college football and what I've seen, and that's how I did it. And I know that a lot of people are just like, oh, my God, how could you not have Bear Bryant on your list? And it's like it's like lost on me that I don't understand that he was one of the greatest coaches of all time. Like, I get it, but personalized experience through my 36 years on this planet and 20 years of being a big college football fan and then turned into journalist, these are the people who I have either admired or been molded by over the years. And, you know, I know that, you know, other people are going to have very different lists, and I think that's what's so fun about this, because no matter how you slice it, Paul, if you name 4 people, you're going to name 20 people or leave 20 people off this list that deserve to be on it. And that's what's fun about it. So, you know, again, we had Mitch Light on the show, and he just had 4 really good coaches that won national titles and have really good records, and that was it. And it's like, okay, well, like, no one's going to argue with any of those choices, but it's a podcast and we're entertaining. And, you know, these are the people that were big for me.
Ari's 4 are Nick Saban, Pete Carroll, Woody Hayes, and I'll try to say this with a straight face, Dabo Swinney. Mm-hmm. Hey, Ari, I understand your mindset here, and I respect it. I'm a student of history, and I was not around during the 1860s when Abraham Lincoln was president, but I do believe he's the best president the nation ever had. So I'm somewhat confused by your 36 years of being alive and watching college football, and how you were able to go back to Woody Hayes, because I know you covered Ohio State. But please explain to the audience how you left out some of the other people, like Paul William Bryant.
Yeah, well, the reason why, and like, listen, maybe this is a little hypocritical too, because Woody Hayes wasn't subject to scholarship limits and stuff, but my personal opinion is that during the Nick Saban reign, this is probably the most complicated and competitive and, you know, sport in terms of parity that it's ever been during the recent past, the last 25 years, both in recruiting and conferences and everybody in the SEC and everyone else trying to win at a high level. And of all the coaches, even outside of Nick Saban, nobody has built a program that's been solid and turned it into an elite juggernaut the way that Dabo did. Nobody. And you could probably make the case that Kirby Smart's on his way, but even then, Georgia was a blue blood and a powerhouse football program that just happened not to win a national title during the past 35 years. Clemson became a juggernaut. And every single coaching hire that is made right now and in the past 15 years, you know, or for right now from the past 15 years, is trying to duplicate what Dabo did. And nobody has done it. So from my perspective as a college football reporter, and listen, I've been on the show before, Paul, telling you I can't stand the way that he hasn't embraced the transfer portal, and I think that Clemson is sliding right now as a result of his stubbornness. I'll be the first person to admit that Dabo, I think, is slipping right now. But from a pure construction standpoint, during the height of the recruiting rankings era, nobody has done what he did. Nobody.
Ari, I respect Woody Hayes. I had the opportunity to meet him a few times, and I think he should be on anyone's list of greatest coaches. But I struggle to think how a man who did win a few national championships and ended his career by punching out Charlie Bauman of Clemson after an interception in the Gator Bowl, could be ranked ahead of Bryant.
Yeah, well, the reason I said this in the story, the reason why I didn't put Bear Bryant on the list is because I had Nick Saban on there, and I didn't want 50% of the list to just be Alabama. Like, if your whole thing is Bear Bryant's one of the greatest coaches of all time and should be on this list, like, I'm not arguing that. Like, I'm with you. You know, I know. But I just wanted to spread the wealth around a little bit, and maybe Woody Hayes is – I was influenced personally on this list by him because of how much time I spent in Columbus, and I've met hundreds of the players that played for him and have grown a great admiration for not only what he built at Ohio State, but the sustainability of that construction project and the fact that he, you know, also was a mentor to one of the other coaches who some people believe should be on this list, in Bo Schembechler. So I was trying my best to be as diverse as possible while also having it reflect my personal experience. And I understand all the things that you're saying, and I have no defense for why Bear Bryant wasn't on my list other than trying to spread the wealth around to more than one school. Because, you know, listen, if you want to say the two greatest coaches in college football history were both at Alabama, like, who am I to argue that? That's a fact probably. So, you know, I wish I had a hotter take of, like, he did this or he did that. That wasn't good enough for me. That's not the case. It was just as simple as Nick Saban, if he's not on your list, you're blind, and then trying to spread the wealth around a little bit.
And your colleague David Ubben, by the way, left him off as well. Ubben's top four were Saban, Bill Snyder, Newt Rockne, and Eddie Robinson. I'll give Ubben high marks for going deep into the history book on that, because Rockne and Robinson are certainly worthy. You know, Pete Carroll is interesting because he really was headed toward being one of the seminal coaches of all time until he left Southern Cal. So I'm not really upset about Pete Carroll.
But most people were, Paul. That was the one that Dabo people were like, oh, come on.
I think Dabo people were just laughing. That was all.
Yeah. People are laughing at the Dabo thing, but I do think that when I say what I'm saying about him, over the course of the past 25 years, if you cannot come up with one other comparison of somebody who built something the way that he did, like, that's a pretty large chunk of the history. And I know that it's right in front of my face, and it's happened during my lifetime, and his reign at Clemson started and continued on through my professional career. So maybe that has part of it, but, like, we're in a very competitive environment right now, and nobody has been able to do what he did, period. And you can go back in time and say, hey, you know, this guy did this and this guy did that, but a lot of times there are parallels there. Like, Dabo is the only person on this list that I think is unparalleled in the accomplishment that he had. Now, Bill Snyder, who Ubben had on his list, was another interesting take because he built something at a place that was winning one game a year and turned into decades long of sustained success for that standard. And I totally understand that too, but it's like, I'm so impressed, and maybe this is just me and being a recruit, Nick, a little bit, and you can save me from it, but I am so impressed by the construction of programs, more so than I am with individual great seasons. And not to say that, of course, Bear Bryant did too. But it's just like everybody, there's a lot of people that have a lot of wins and a lot of national championships. What did Dabo do? He has 2 titles, and he built something that didn't exist before his arrival.
No, listen,
that's not something you can say for a lot of people.
Ari, I don't know what your plans are for the next couple hours. I would strongly recommend not listening or watching this show.
No, I know. People are going to go crazy. And that's not my intention either. You know, I'm not trying to fire people up. But, like, again, just to remind you before, you know, I get the tweets and everything, like, this is my personal list.
No,
and
listen,
the reason why Carroll's on my list.
We would not have invited you if we didn't respect you. And, you know, we unlike my former self, we've gotten much deeper into this conversation before I had to take blood pressure medication. Ari, thank you very much. It's always great to have you on.
Anytime, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Ari Wasserman. One last postscript to his Woody Hayes inclusion. I believe this is the only time they met, but Woody Hayes and Bear Bryant did meet in the 1978 Sugar Bowl. And you Alabama fans will not be surprised when I tell you that Alabama won that game 35-6 over one of his Mount Rushmores.